Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Chang, Donen Manam Chembo, Nyalche Dankara Dargam Santo, Sherman, Stumba Turje Janla Kishom Sar, Nishan Roar Zerni Jangamsa, Jabur Tujishan, Yelaman, Jimmy Banzo Jala, Soran. Gonjo Toban for Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban for Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban for Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Next, we will continue further discussing the Shurangama Sutra. From a historical perspective, the Shurangama Sutra should be regarded as a profoundly important teaching for Buddhists. It is an especially deep Dharma gateway, particularly for those students engaged in the study of Chinese Buddhism, regardless of which school or tradition they belong to. This is a scripture that should not be omitted, because if we look at history, no matter which Buddhist school a practitioner belongs to, they have basically gained some realization or understanding of the Shurangama Sutra. But in modern times, perhaps due to various reasons, there are not that many people now who study, teach, or practice the Shurangama Sutra. Is the number of people engaging with the Shurangama Sutra large? As everyone can clearly see, the situation is not particularly ideal or favorable. But no matter what, times are always changing. And so too are our listening, contemplation, and practice. The causes and conditions of sentient beings are also constantly changing. We often say that worldly affairs are impermanent, and in this sense, this time we are also discussing the Shurangama Sutra. Most of the students are still very diligent in their studies. From the beginning until now, they have remained earnest. I hope that each of you should also be mentally prepared. No matter how long it takes us to finish, everyone should complete the study. There are also some people who, even if they weren't here at the beginning, may have the karmic connection to join in the middle. Even if you only listen to 1 or 2 classes, that's fine too, because many of the principles contained here are also, without a doubt, extremely profound. As for the entire lineage, I have not received it myself. Except for the last 2 chapters, I have not received the transmission. During our process of studying, if we can realize the true mind of the Buddha, then in fact the true merit and blessings that come from listening are equally obtained. So in the process of learning, everyone should also cherish this opportunity. Some of us, when we first start learning, begin by attending 1 or 2 classes. This can be seen as a kind of karmic connection, a subtle bond. Then at the very end, they simply come to attend the last 1 or 2 classes. Other than that, in the middle, they disappear into the Dharma realm. Some may have fallen into the hell realms. Some may have been reborn in the heaven of the 33 gods. Then, during the last class or the first class, they show up for a moment. Perhaps this is in their own unique way how they are able to hear and receive the Dharma. But for most of us, we should still be very hardworking and diligent indeed. We should persevere from beginning to end, always maintaining this attitude. So I just wanted to briefly mention this point right at the very beginning. Now let's continue with our discussion. We have now finished discussing the 7 locations of investigating the mind. After finishing that, Ananda said, although I am the youngest and most beloved disciple of the Buddha, and I'm also widely learned and knowledgeable, my practice is rather lacking. When I encounter adverse conditions, I truly have no way to deal with them. So I must cultivate diligently and with great care. Whenever he encountered any problems or difficulties outside, he always thought of practice. At this point, the Buddha began to teach us the important method of practice, samadhi. He was just about to teach us samadhi. At this time, the Buddha was also preparing to teach. Ananda then prostrated himself fully and respectfully, bowing to the Buddha. The assembly was also willing to listen and receive the teachings, to listen to the Buddha's instructions. This too is a kind of karmic connection. Actually, between the Buddha and Ananda, there should also be a deep mutual understanding. The Buddha was especially skillful in answering questions, and Ananda was especially skillful and thoughtful in raising questions, often asking with clarity and care. Because of this vast and profound Shurangama Sutra was able to be completed in its entirety. If at that time Venerable Ananda indeed had only asked 1 or 2 questions, perhaps this sutra would have been a very brief one. But Ananda did not give up no matter what happened. Even if the Buddha appeared to be displeased or dissatisfied, or no matter what the Buddha expressed, he would immediately raise another question. In this way, the profound essential teachings of this sutra were revealed and left for future generations. Actually, if we look at our current situation, it is the same. Some great monks and accomplished masters have by their side especially capable disciples who understand the teacher's intentions. Such outstanding and dedicated disciples, such exceptional students, may use various means to ensure that during the time while the teacher is still alive and present among us, the teacher will leave behind especially profound and meaningful teachings. If the disciples who are gathered around the teacher are only involved in idle talk, rumors, and gossip, and all sorts of trivial matters, and do not form a good and meaningful connection with the profound teachings, then perhaps the teacher will leave behind very few written works or teachings for future generations to learn from and benefit. Therefore, whether a teacher is successful, whether he can contribute to human society and also to future generations, on one hand, of course, is closely related to his own aspirations and his wisdom and compassion, which are intimately connected. But on the other hand, the era in which he lives, in fact, the surrounding environment and the disciples around him are also having very close connections. Venerable Ananda, too, had a profound understanding of the Buddha's true intent. It seems that it was in the Agama Sutras. In the earlier part of the Ekottara Agama Sutra, there is a section called the Treatise on the Distinction of Merits. In the Treatise on the Distinction of Merits, it is mentioned why Ananda was chosen by the Buddha to be his attendant throughout his life. The main reason is that he was especially skillful in understanding the Buddha's true intent. Moreover, as for himself, he did not seek to attain the exhaustion of defilements, nor did he seek it for himself, nor did he seek to attain nirvana for himself, or to attain any particularly supreme fruition. He was always especially skillful in understanding the Buddha's true intent. Actually, this is very important and crucial. In the Treatise on the Distinction of Merits, the Buddha also spoke in this way in their speech. For some disciples as well, and having the ability to understand the teacher's true intent is very important. Otherwise, some people nowadays might not even consider what the teacher's true intent is at all. And some people misinterpret the teacher's true intent. For example, the teacher doesn't like soliciting donations. Someone say, the teacher said we shouldn't solicit donations, but I know his true intent. In fact, he means to solicit donations because I know he is short of money. So he says not to solicit donations verbally, but in fact, we definitely should solicit donations. The teacher says everyone should listen, contemplate, and practice the teachings. When it comes to listening, contemplating, and practicing, this is not the ultimate meaning. It's not that the teacher is asking for listening, contemplation, and practice. The teacher is asking for generating bodhicitta. The teacher says it's about motivation. But what he means by motivation is not that you shouldn't listen and contemplate. Many people, whether it's with their so-called teacher or their own understanding of the teacher's true intent, really don't know for what reason, often fail to grasp the teacher's true intent. This is also a very crucial issue. So whether you are close to the teacher or close to the Dharma teachers, if we ourselves are not qualified to be called teachers or Dharma teachers, each one of us, in appearance, there may be higher and lower positions. So as subordinates towards the teacher, we should strive to understand the true intent and thoughts of those above us. And this should be done through various means, whether it's in daily life or in spiritual practice. This aspect is also very important, so I wanted to specifically mention it here. Next, the Buddha was about to begin teaching them, preparing to share his teachings, and it was also a very profound Dharma teaching. As for this profound and extraordinary Dharma teaching, what did he say next? At that time, the world-honored one, from his face, emitted all kinds of brilliant and radiant light. The radiance was dazzling, like hundreds of thousands of blazing suns. This means that at that moment, the Buddha emitted various brilliant colors from his face, 5 colored rays of light of all kinds. Moreover, this light could be described as brilliant and dazzling, or blindingly radiant, exceptionally and especially magnificent in appearance. Such light was, as it turned out, equivalent to the radiance of hundreds of thousands of suns in our world, illuminated this world just like that. Of course, this might be different from sunlight, because if the light of hundreds of thousands of suns were to shine together. We probably wouldn't even be able to see it at all, and it would be extremely hard to even open our eyes in such a situation. But in reality, this description of the Buddha's majestic and awe-inspiring appearance can truly be said to be dazzlingly radiant, incredibly and extremely magnificent, and especially majestic in every possible way. That should be the meaning here. As for the term face here, there are different possible interpretations. In some commentaries, it refers to the light emanating from the Buddha's mouth at that time. There are such explanations as well. In our Tibetan version, it is specifically between the eyebrows, the white urna light, which shines forth from there. Sometimes when we look at others, for example, Master Jiaoguang in some of their treatises, the Buddha gently radiates light from many places, including both feet, the secret place or the navel, and the crown of the head. They're all emitting great deals of light. But generally speaking, these lights, the light from the mouth, is mainly for expounding and explaining the teachings of the three vehicles. The light emitted from the white urna between the eyebrows is for teaching the Mahayana Dharma. So in this case, it is very likely that the so-called face refers to the white urna, because it is also belonging to the lights on the face. Because what he was teaching is actually the Mahayana Dharma. Moreover, some great masters, for example, Changshui Zixuan, he believed that the Shurangama Sutra should have come after the Lotus Sutra and before the well-known scripture Nirvana Sutra. What is the reason for this? One reason is that in this sutra, in fact, it previously talked about King Prasenajit, how when he was young he saw the Ganges River and so on. It tells some stories about King Prasenajit. Later, it talks about the Shakya clan, that is the conflict between King Virudaka and the Shakya clan, and it also describes some of their grievances. In this way, so, between King Prasenajit and King Virudaka, the time span should be quite long. King Virudaka was notably the son of King Prasenajit, so the events described in this sutra actually span across a rather long period of time. In fact, it may not have been completed in just one place. Also, this scripture contains some predictions, including those for certain individual practitioners. At the beginning of the Lotus Sutra, predictions were given to the Shravaka vehicle. At that time, many of the Shravakas were very joyful. They received this prediction that they had never obtained before. So, as for the predictions given later, those should have been spoken before the Nirvana Sutra. There are also other great masters, and some of them can be mentioned as well. As for the Nirvana Sutra, in fact, at that time, the Buddha's face was also shining with light. Because the Buddha's face was radiating a brilliant, gentle light at that time, he manifested parinirvana before all sentient beings and asked the sentient beings if they had any questions. If you have any questions, ask them now. The Tathagata will soon enter parinirvana. So, from the profound Nirvana Sutra, there are also quite similar teachings. In that case, what can we understand from the content here? We could know that at that particular time, whether it was the light radiating from the Buddha's face or light shining from between his eyebrows, this radiant light illuminated the entire world. At this moment, the Buddha world experienced 6 kinds of tremors. And all the Buddha lands, as well as all the Buddha worlds, there were in total 6 notable and significant tremors that occurred. As for these 6 tremors in other sutras that we have studied before, it was also mentioned, when discussing other sutras, that the 6 kinds of tremors are as follows: moving, surging, and rising. These 3 are tremors in form or appearance, and then shaking, roaring, and striking. These 3 are tremors in sound. Of course, some of these subtle phenomena can generally only be perceived or noticed within the advanced meditative states of noble bodhisattvas, and not by ordinary people. It's not the same as an earthquake that we experience, where everything shakes and creates a sense of fear among the people in the area. It shouldn't be like that. It's not just the Buddha who, when teaching this Dharma at that time, would manifest such auspicious signs. In fact, those later eminent monks, great masters, and accomplished practitioners, whether they were turning the wheel of Dharma or displaying parinirvana, or when they manifested some various special miracles and supernatural powers, there would also be tremors throughout nature, or rainbows, clouds, and so on would appear. There are all kinds of auspicious signs. Thus, many Dharma friends occasionally see things like, look, there's a light behind the sun. wow, there's a rainbow over there. Actually, rainbows are rather quite common in the summer, so they aren't necessarily auspicious signs, especially when herding yaks in the mountains. You can see rainbows everywhere. If all of these were considered auspicious signs, then, oh, I did a really great job herding cattle today. Look, there's a beautiful curved rainbow over there. Because it often rains in the mountains, and after the rain clears, that kind of thing happens too. But sometimes it might really be the inconceivable blessing power of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It could truly be an auspicious sign, but it's not easy to distinguish. We can't just think that if there's something in the sky, sometimes there's a kind of light around the sun, a halo, right? Yes, we can't just assume all those are that kind of sign. After some people pass away, they take photos of the sun halo and then use a computer to paste it together with the deceased's body. Nowadays, many people all have started creating all kinds of so-called auspicious signs. In that case, it's also possible, but actually, whether it's real or not, we honestly don't really know for sure. In fact, this has also been discussed here before. When it comes to vibrations, it's not just the world's vibrations, it's actually our inner world. The mountains, rivers, and earth outside and the four elements of our bodies are actually integrated as one. If some auspicious signs appear externally, then auspicious signs will also appear internally. Especially when some holy beings turn the wheel of Dharma, there will definitely be the vessel for the Dharma, which shakes and vibrates within the mind. This is very important and significant. For example, when you meet a particularly blessed holy being, at that moment, even just listening to a teaching, your entire mind and heart can be deeply and profoundly moved. Or, when you hear their Dharma voice, you are shaken. In this way, the attachment you once held as real could completely collapse and crumble. From then on, you become a true worthy vessel for the Dharma. So sometimes these external shocks and disturbances in the world can actually bring an even greater and more significant impact to the mind. Sometimes, for example, at Laronggar, many people who have never met before, when they reach the top of the mountain and look out, they exclaim, wow, this is so overwhelming. In fact, being moved in this way is very important. Sometimes if you are deeply moved, you will start to reflect and think, why is it like this? In this way, one's own view of life and understanding of Buddhist teachings will gain a true strength that makes one a worthy vessel for the Dharma. This strength is planted as a seed in their alaya. So in this regard, we can also understand it this way. Whenever the 6 kinds of tremors occurred at that time, all the worlds as numerous as dust motes in the 10 directions were revealed at once. Moreover, through the Buddha's miraculous power, all these worlds were merged into a single realm. What does this mean? At that time, due to the Buddha's blessing, when he was about to turn the wheel of Dharma, all the worlds as numerous as dust motes in the 10 directions, countless and innumerable, the thousands upon thousands of lands in the 10 directions, could all be seen with one's own eyes at that very moment. They appeared before everyone. Then, relying on the Buddha's power, they were transformed into a single world. The one became many, and the many became one. Perhaps this is one aspect of it. And then at this moment, all the bodhisattvas in the physical worlds remained in their own native lands without having to leave, and they all listened to his teachings with palms joined in respect, receiving the precious Dharma teachings from the Buddha above. When this was explained at the time, perhaps many people found it a bit hard to comprehend, but now perhaps we truly understand it. Sometimes by relying on using the internet, for example, at such times there are so many, whether it's videos or audios from the world, they can be turned into countless copies. And if you write a program or create a method like this, for instance, they can instantly all become a single bright point, become one entity. And we can also, including what we're doing right now, you use this method to teach everyone so that people in different places, regardless of their location, from different places and different countries, all kinds of people at the very same time can both see and hear it. This particular point in the past truly was what we called neither coming nor going. The concept of one becoming many and many becoming one used to seem incredible when people thought, oh, that's just impossible. But now perhaps it really is possible after all, let alone the truly miraculous powers of the Buddha. Even the extraordinary abilities of many remarkable ordinary scientists today have transformed this world into a place where one becomes many and many become one. It's truly amazing. Now, basically, our sense of sight and hearing, all of these can, just like magical transformations, be experienced by countless people all over the world, all at the same time. For example, we can use online video or audio or teleconferences and many other means. Now we can do things that were unimaginable in ancient times. Now, and perhaps in the future, scientists are also researching whether senses such as taste, smell, and touch can also simply be transmitted in this way. But right now, this is still a bit difficult for scientists. Many of these things are essentially chemical in nature. So if you want to transmit taste or smell to someone else, seeing is actually possible. You can see it, but not only do you need to see it, you also need to touch it. And if you also want to really be able to smell it, for now, that's still a bit difficult. According to the Abhidharmakosha, sound dust, form dust, and the other elements of form, sound, smell, taste, and touch are composed of different subtle elements. The elements that make them up are different. Therefore, some so-called transmissions of waves are possible in certain cases. Perhaps in terms of physics, the transmission of some waves is possible, but some cannot be realized. In fact, this can be described as one becoming many and many becoming one, or as neither coming nor going. However, in the process of neither coming nor going, you can also enjoy it. For example, when we attend lectures online, in reality, it is basically the same as what is being discussed here. Although most of the listeners are not bodhisattvas and the speaker is not a Buddha either, even ordinary people in the world of ordinary people can also receive similar treatment as bodhisattvas and Buddhas. We should indeed be able to communicate together and make use of this kind of platform together. This too is indeed an absolutely incredible power. So at this time, I would also like to say this to everyone again. Nowadays, including many Dharma friends, when it comes to learning methods, whether you rely on online lectures or not, or use other ways to study, you must never interrupt the process of listening, contemplating, and practicing. For example, at Larunga, no matter what we encounter in the past, including just a few years ago, or more than 10 years ago, we have all faced some things, but in reality, we have never at any point missed even a single class. Therefore, when we study outside, sometimes in terms of our study methods and approaches, it is necessary to take a break and make some adjustments. Previously, we also had some group study sessions where everyone adjusted for a period of time through self-study. In the future, it might also be necessary to self-study for another month or two. Actually, when it comes to self-study, sometimes we should, for example, when we all gather together as a group to participate in and successfully complete a 6-month course, if we switch to self-study for a month or 3 months, honestly, there really shouldn't be any problem at all in this situation. This way of studying might actually be necessary. When it is necessary, I sincerely hope that no one will drop out during this process. Some of our study materials cannot be provided immediately. And if we can't provide them to everyone, in today's world, things should be very convenient. Being in such a world with the internet, we have the opportunity to take advantage of the online videos or e-books in that case. It is also very convenient. Then we might have some things like dividing into different majors, for example, or awarding prizes to those who are volunteers. And also, in terms of certain aspects of our management, there may be some management aspects, including discussions and study in seminars, for example, as well as the provision of some relevant materials. Some of these we are able to provide to everyone, perhaps in another way. For some things, particularly those that are being prepared or planned, at the beginning of next year, at that specific time, we can also provide them to everyone who is interested or in need. In any case, actually, at any time, we should continue to keep studying and learning. Listening, contemplating, and practicing should never be interrupted. Perhaps in the long run, such listening, contemplation, practice, and benefiting sentient beings, the approach should be constantly switched. In this way, it would be very good. Of course, there are several special cases where it might not be necessary. If it's not needed, then we could still follow the usual way as before and continue to engage in listening, contemplation, and practice on our own. But in some particular places, I think it's especially necessary. When necessary, especially for those in positions of responsibility, we must possess a kind of wisdom and courage. Simultaneously, it is imperative to employ appropriate, skillful means, effective methods, and expedient ingenuity as well. In this way, all of us, regardless of what the circumstances or situations may be, should always be able to successfully complete our own studies. This is extremely important. Right now, at this very moment, we are also here talking about the Shurangama Sutra, where many bodhisattvas are sitting in their own countries, unmoving like this, but they still continue to receive the precious teachings of the Tathagata. Actually, we are the same now. It is especially convenient for us. In the past, many people truly went out to seek the Dharma, crossing seas of fire, climbing mountains, and traversing ridges, enduring such ascetic practices again and again. But now it is very easy to obtain many of the Tathagata's profound and secret teachings and realizations. If we do not truly cherish this valuable opportunity ourselves, it is truly a great regret or a pity. Here, let me briefly mention this point on the side. This kind of content, when the Buddha manifested such auspicious signs at that time, everyone in the assembly was especially focused and deeply attentive, each person in their own different place, listening carefully to the Tathagata's teachings with palms joined together. At this time, the Buddha spoke to Ananda, because the Buddha and Ananda were together in one place on such an occasion, while the other bodhisattvas in other places could also see it. It should be that the bodhisattvas in other places could see it at time. The whole scene with the Buddha and Ananda briefly, I'm not sure, but they should have been able to see the scene. At that moment, the Buddha told Ananda, all sentient beings from beginningless time have had all kinds of delusions, and karma arises naturally, like evil thorns. Then the Buddha transmitted the Dharma to him. Ananda, you must listen, and all sentient beings must listen too. In fact, all sentient beings in our world, indeed, from beginningless time, have had all kinds of inverted karma and deluded seeds. When these naturally ripen, what do they become like? In India, there is a plant called echaju, the gathering of evil spirits. It's just like that. What does that mean? We sentient beings from beginningless time have been endlessly cycling in this samsara. If this endless cycle continues, it is mainly due to three reasons. One is our karma, the karma of good and evil deeds. Another is the seeds. The seeds specifically and primarily refer to ignorance, or you could say afflictions, ignorance and afflictions. And when these naturally ripen, they eventually give rise to all kinds of suffering. So at that time, it was compared to the echaju. What is echaju? It is a type of plant found in India. It seems that in India it is called jingangzi, vajra seed. It can be used to string together bodhi beads. But this plant may have different shapes. The meaning is that each of these plants, each echa fruit, actually has three seeds that are often together. So these three, some masters, when explaining, say they represent karma, afflictions, and suffering. In our world, within the 12 links of dependent origination, these few are relatively important. Why do we say these few are so important? Because these are actually mutually serving as causes and conditions for each other. So what does it mean to become causes and conditions for each other? Sometimes they become results, sometimes they become causes. In his annotations on the meaning of the Shurangama Sutra, Chang Shui quotes a Buddhist scripture. I think this Buddhist scripture actually has a very profound meaning. The meaning of the scripture is, all dharmas are stored in the storehouse consciousness, and the storehouse is also in the dharmas. They mutually serve as the essential nature of result, and are always, in every case, the nature of cause as well. This sentence means that all dharmas, in fact, have many different seeds stored in the alaya consciousness. Some are stored in our consciousness, and some are stored in the external dharmas of the outside world. These two sometimes become results and sometimes become causes. Just like the example of the echa fruit mentioned earlier. What is the echa fruit? After it grows, it falls to the ground and it may become a seed again. After becoming a seed, it again. Nowadays, some of our flowers are like this too. Originally, the flower is the fruit. Then the flower stalk and some petals gently fall to the ground. And slowly, slowly they grow again. So in our world, Some things are stored in the alaya, like a person's habitual tendencies. Since childhood, they may have had a bad temper or strong anger. These are things from their previous life, seeds stored in the alaya. Some are stored outside, meaning these habitual tendencies, just like in the words of my perfect teacher, among the 4 types of results mentioned, some results ripen in the external environment. It's the same. He is reborn in an extremely poor place, a place with thorny trees, a place plagued by war, a very barren place, and so on. These are external experiences. As for these causes and conditions, some become causes, some become results. For some realized beings, perhaps they can exhaust these causes and conditions in just one lifetime. But for others, they keep creating more on top of these causes. In the past, great masters often said, go along with conditions to exhaust old karma and never create new misfortune. This is often passed down in Han regions. There are some bodhisattvas, some accomplished practitioners, who go along with conditions relying on various experiences in this life and completely exhaust all their old karma. Then they no longer create new karma, but ordinary people are different. While they are undergoing and experiencing the effects and consequences of their past karma, they are also constantly creating new karma. It's just like beings in hell. While suffering in hell, they also generate an intense and powerful hatred toward their adversaries. In the animal realm, they experience the deep and profound suffering that comes from ignorance, while also giving rise to strong feelings of hatred and greed toward others. So from this, what can we see? That sentient beings, since beginningless time, have been endlessly and continuously cycling due to various kinds of karma. Because of this, many practitioners cannot attain unsurpassed enlightenment. As for many practitioners, in theory, after practicing, many should indeed be able to attain realization. However, because we, as sentient beings, are all bound by such karmic forces from the past, it is possible that some practitioners, even though they very much wish to attain Buddhahood or realization in this very life, in reality, not only are they unable to achieve unsurpassed enlightenment, they may even fall into other states, or in other words, they may fall or go astray, and in the end, some become Shravakas, while others become Pratyeka Buddhas. These outcomes are still considered acceptable. At the very least, they have already attained liberation from samsara. But what is even more tragic? Some have already, for various reasons, become followers of non-Buddhist traditions, and some have turned into worldly Maras, like the Mara king Papian, the king of Maras, and some become the retinue of the Mara king Papian, and so on, creating all kinds of karma. Truly pitiable. What is the reason for this? It is explained here. They do not understand the 2 main principles and practice confusedly. In these cases, one reason is causes and conditions from beginningless time, and another is that there are 2 types of causes and conditions. What are these 2 types of causes and conditions? Not knowing the 2 fundamental principles. These principles will be explained later. Because of practicing and habituating in a confused way, for these reasons, they continue to cycle in the lower realms. What are these people like exactly? They are just like someone really trying to cook sand, trying to turn extremely fine sand into something else, boiling it in a pot over and over, and after boiling it, it turns into a delicious and exquisite dish. But that's simply impossible. As we often say, if you attempt to extract valuable oil from ordinary sand, you will never obtain any, no matter how hard you try. Even if you persist through countless eons, as numerous as the dust particles scattered throughout the universe, you will never truly achieve real accomplishment. Here, for example, Master Uyi also carefully explains this point. Here, cooking sand refers specifically to imputed nature, while delicacies refer to perfected nature. In other words, if we rely on imputed nature and discursive thoughts in our practice, then you will never obtain the ultimate delicacy of true realization. This kind of food will forever be out of reach. You could say it's just wishful thinking, completely unattainable. As for something like perfected nature, what do they use as an analogy? It's like actually mistaking a rope for a snake, or even trying to turn a snake into a real rope. That's also impossible. So, at the root, if you approach it with imputed nature, the true nature of the mind, its original face, the perfected nature that manifests in this way, is very difficult to attain. Because if we truly want to practice, we must first come to realize and deeply understand the true nature of the mind. If you haven't recognized the nature of your mind, then all your other efforts are essentially useless and will not achieve anything. We've already talked about this before. Back then, Master Mazu, Before he attained enlightenment, he practiced with great dedication and diligence. At that time, it was probably Master Huairang. He saw that his practice was a bit off track. While Mazu was meditating, Huairang started grinding a stone nearby. As he did so, one person was meditating and another was grinding a stone. It was quite something, some Dharma friends in retreat. While another is making noise, fiddling with things, making creaking sounds, which is really annoying. But actually, perhaps they're doing it just to provide you with a bit of convenience. When Master Huairang was grinding the stone nearby, Mazu started to feel a bit annoyed. He asked, "Well, what are you doing?" Huairang replied, "I'm polishing a mirror." Then he asked, "Do you think it's possible to turn a stone into a mirror by grinding it?" Then Huairang answered him, "So, do you really think you can actually become a Buddha just by meditating? Is that truly possible?" Later, he used the ox cart analogy to explain that one must recognize the mind's true nature. If you don't recognize it, no matter how much time you spend, even with diligent meditation practice like this, you still won't achieve genuine Buddhahood. It is said that precisely because of this very reason, Mazu eventually became enlightened. Actually, for some great masters, it's like a ripe melon falling from its stem. Just a little guidance is enough for them. But for others, no matter what, even if you teach them the deepest and best methods, not only will it have no effect on them, it might even make their minds more confused and scattered. That's a real possibility. So at that time, this is how Mazu attained enlightenment. Therefore, here it is also said, there are two reasons why one cannot actually achieve realization. What exactly are these two? The Buddha told Ananda, first, since beginningless time, the root of birth and death, meaning the mind of samsara and the mind of nirvana. If we do not recognize the mind of samsara and the mind of nirvana, then sentient beings have no way. Their practice is futile and fruitless. So what is the first one? Since beginningless time, sentient beings, what is the root of birth and death? It is that right now you and all of the sentient beings use a clinging, grasping mind and mistake it for the true mind of self-nature. This is the first reason. Since beginningless time, all sentient beings have had a mind. Right now, we are using a mind that clings and grasps, and we take it to be the true mind. Here, when he says true mind, it can also be called self-nature or true mind. Both nature and mind, in Tibetan, it is referred to as the true mind. You could certainly put it that way. As for this so-called clinging and grasping, you should also be familiar with this, right? And regarding the object of grasping, the object of the deluded mind is called the object of grasping. The mind that clings to the object is called grasping. Grasping an object can be described as the subject and object of cognition. Nowadays, some great masters explain it as the true mind and the active mind. There are also different interpretations. Actually, it is quite similar to the subject and object of cognition. What this means is our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the six consciousnesses. When the six consciousnesses are at work, in the end, regarding the objects of the six consciousnesses, we generate various deluded discriminations. All these deluded discriminations can be called grasping at objects. We shouldn't think in such a way. Of course, nowadays, when many great masters explain this, they say our attachment to a certain person or our constant contact with someone in daily life. These are all called grasping at objects. Of course, it can be explained this way too. But what is the most fundamental form of grasping? Actually, it is that we truly do not recognize our own discriminating mind. There are ones can take and be taken, just like what is said in the Vimalakirti Sutra, how to cut off attachments, by means of non-attainment. If there is nothing to be gained, then there is no need to cling to anything. If we realize emptiness, you will get nothing. If there is nothing to gain, then there is no need to cling. Before this, as an ordinary lady, do you ever try to gain connections? Ordinary people must have connections. And some climbing is also perhaps, maybe you are gradually getting further and further away from your true self. But in some cases, adverse conditions become favorable conditions. There are also such cases. For example, the Shakyamuni Buddha had a brother named Nanda. Nanda and his wife, whose name was Banja Riga, had a very good relationship. Some people say that the wife was particularly strict with him, that she kept Nanda under very strict control. Some say they were very much in love, but no matter what, they were always inseparable. Once, when the Buddha wanted to help him attain enlightenment and the conditions were ripe, he gradually appeared from a distance. When he finally appeared, Nanda said, "I want to go before the Buddha and make respectful offerings." Then his wife said, "You can't be gone for a long time, you know. If you go out for just a short while, that's perfectly fine with me." Then Nanda said, "Okay, so how long can I actually be gone for?" She paused for a moment, then she spat on the ground and said, "Before this spit dries up, you must hurry back to me as quickly as you can. If you go past this time, then you are not allowed to come back." After hearing this, he went to make offerings to the Buddha. As a result, the Buddha manifested wonders. He could never catch up with the Buddha. The Buddha just walked slowly, very slowly. And he kept chasing after him. He kept chasing all the way to Jetavana Monastery. When he arrived there, after making offerings to the Buddha, he said, "I have to go back right away. My wife will be waiting for me. If I take too long, she's very fierce. She won't let me in. It'll be a big problem." But the Buddha said, it's all right, just wait a little bit. There's a very nice forest nearby. Let's go there." So they went into the forest. They saw many apes and blind monkeys. Then the Buddha was asked, "Who is more beautiful, your wife or the blind monkeys here?" And he replied, "Oh, my Banzariga is 1,000,000 times more beautiful." Then the Buddha took him to the heavenly realm. This story, from the words of my perfect teacher, is well known to everyone. After they arrived in the heavenly realm, the heavenly maidens there were very beautiful. The Buddha asked, "Is your wife more beautiful, or are these heavenly maidens?" Wow, these heavenly maidens are also exceptionally beautiful. If he kept his vows, he would be reborn there. And then he really wanted to become a monk. But some say he had already become a monk earlier. Others say that it was at that time he wanted to become a monk. Then he was taken to hell. In hell, he saw the state of his own downfall and became frightened. In the end, he continuously developed renunciation. Then he didn't go back, but attained the state of an arhat, right? This is the first aspect, the mind of samsara. The second is the mind of nirvana. The fundamentally pure substance of the beginningless bodhi and nirvana is that originally luminous, pure essence of consciousness you now possess, which can generate all conditioned attachments, yet remains that which all such attachments leave behind. This is talking about the second aspect, the mind of nirvana. Since beginningless time within our continuum, we have always possessed bodhi and nirvana. Such a fundamentally pure, radiant, and luminous nature has always existed within us. Here, bodhi and nirvana are explained by many great masters as the 3 types of bodhi and the 3 types of nirvana. Some interpret it according to the Yogacara school and discuss it in great detail. Actually, for such scriptures, it is also acceptable to explain them from the Yogacara perspective. In Han region, the Yogacara school has also been relatively well connected in the past. When Master Xuanzang returned during the Tang dynasty, Master Jiaxian also said that after you return, you should focus on promoting the Yogacara school, because the sentient beings you are meant to guide are there. Indeed, later on, the promotion of the Yogacara school was very successful. Regarding the Yogacara school, my view is I have studied Yogacara teachings before. To be honest, between Yogacara and Madhyamaka is still easier to understand, because the theories in Yogacara are especially numerous and complex. But when you try to truly understand them in the end, for example, there are distinctions between concepts like imputed nature and dependent nature, as discussed in key texts. When discussing Yogacara, many people feel a bit, oh no, it's going to be a bit exhausting again. What exactly does dependent nature mean? In Han region, indeed, many great masters are. Perhaps this is due to Xuanzang's influence. Later on, they gradually became the Yogacara school. So now when we look at many commentaries, they are basically explained from the perspective of Yogacara. Whether it's this or that, the explanations are all rather difficult to understand. Personally, I think the Yogacara school is quite hard to grasp. By comparison, Madhyamaka is easier to understand. And then when you compare Madhyamaka with Dzogchen, Dzogchen is much more straightforward, to be honest. Nowadays, there's a saying in the world that goes like this: people with lower overall qualities are becoming more and more complicated, and it's extremely difficult to communicate with them. But if a person has higher qualities, communication becomes simple, joyful, and inclusive. It's very easy. There's this kind of saying. Can we use this kind of analogy? But in reality, generally speaking, the Yogacara school actually is indeed part of Mahayana Buddhism. For example, in Tibetan region, there are also a great many scriptures and treatises that are explained according to the Yogacara school. But in terms of the overall framework, it is especially complex. So every time when explaining from the perspective of the Yogacara school, it turns out to be both difficult to understand and complicated. In the end, what you arrive at is also a kind of luminous nature, but what exactly is this luminous nature like? It still needs to rely on other things, such as Madhyamaka, emptiness, and Tathagatagarbha, thought. Without using these to make distinctions, it's still very difficult. So when we explain treatises in the future, of course, according to the previous approach, including what I saw from Master Wu and Master Yuan Ying, when they explain these teachings, whenever they approach the Yogacara school, I would sometimes flip through it again, look further down, and realize that their entire teaching system is Yogacara. They definitely follow the tradition of their lineage masters. This is how they explain it, but when explaining it this way, there are also different methods of explanation. The thoughts of all Buddhas and Tathagatas can all be explained in this way, but when we try to understand it, I feel it's not as direct as Madhyamaka, and even less direct than Vajrayana teachings. For example, when we translate in Tibetan, it's quite straightforward. We say that from beginningless time, the pure nature of our Buddha nature and nirvana refers to the Tathagatagarbha. Here, the essence of consciousness is pure and luminous, refers to our Tathagatagarbha, or the ultimately definitive alaya. It can manifest all kinds of conditions, encompassing all phenomena and external appearances. Yet it is beyond all conditions. It is difficult to realize its true nature. This sentence is easier to explain according to the Tibetan language, because the nature of our mind definitely possesses the nature of both nirvana and bodhi. In this way, such a Tathagatagarbha, or this kind of original mind, can actually manifest all kinds of supporting conditions for the world of vessels and the world of sentient beings. All sorts of manifestations. However, for us to realize it, as ordinary people, is not easy. The meaning of it is beyond all conditions. If we want to realize it, that is not so simple. It is extremely uncommon. So, as for this section, perhaps, for example, if it were to be explained directly in the Tibetan way, it is relatively simple. If we use some other approaches, maybe including Bodhi, which mainly refers to the aspect of realization, Nirvana refers to the aspect of cessation. When these two are combined, that is our essence of consciousness. As for the essence of consciousness, it is the most refined part of our mind consciousness, and it can also be called Buddha nature, or sometimes referred to as alaya, not alaya vijnana. As for alaya, sometimes it is called the eighth consciousness or the ninth consciousness. There are also different interpretations. In many commentaries, it is explained in a broader sense, and that is also acceptable. In fact, it is very easy for us to recognize Buddha nature. In the Jingde record of the transmission of the lamp, it is said, if one recognizes it, one knows it is Buddha nature. If not, it is called the vital soul. If we recognize the true nature of the mind, it can also be called the Tathagatagarbha, or it can be called Bodhi, or it can be called Nirvana, or it can be called the ultimate alaya. If you do not recognize it, perhaps we call it mind consciousness or the vital soul, and there are all kinds of different names for it. There are all sorts of different terms here. What should be discussed is, what is the mind of nirvana? We are originally endowed with this pure Tathagatagarbha, but it is difficult for us to recognize it. Because of this, sentient beings have lost this innate clarity. Sentient beings have already abandoned this, the innate nature of our own mind. In this way, even if one simply practices all day long, even if one works hard and practices diligently every single day, if you do not recognize your own true nature, especially about yourself, then you will enter various realms in vain. In the end, what will you inevitably enter at the end of it all? The cycle of the 6 realms of samsara. Because you have not recognized your true nature, if you do not recognize your true nature, it is very likely that you will fall into the 6 realms. If you do not recognize it, even if you practice diligently day after day, just as Master Fu once said, every night I sleep embracing the Buddha, every morning I rise together with him. Although everyone's Tathagatagarbha or Buddha nature is always living and sleeping together with oneself, but it is very difficult to recognize the true nature of one's own mind. So regarding this particular issue, some great masters consider this to be extremely crucial. For example, Master Wu said, these 2 questions are the central key points of the Shurangama Sutra. Moreover, they are like essential pith instructions and must be taken seriously. Therefore, we should also understand why sentient beings drift about in samsara. One reason is we do not recognize the mind of birth and death. Another is that we have not recognized the true nature of the Tathagatagarbha. If you have studied Ratnagotra Vibhaga, and understand some Vajrayana principles, then the principles of the Shurangama Sutra are easier to explain. Then the Buddha told Ananda, didn't you say you actually wanted to use the method of samadhi to truly understand how to really be free from birth and death? Because after encountering this adverse condition, Venerable Ananda was very eager to practice. Some of our Dharma friends are also like this. After going out, some of them are asked very sharp questions by others, and when they come back, they think, oh, I should really study and reflect well after coming back. Otherwise, it's really embarrassing in front of others. Then there are some people who, during their practice, encounter great obstacles and adverse conditions. And some say, although I'm well-read and knowledgeable, it's not enough. I need to practice diligently. If you don't counteract your afflictions, there's nothing you can do in the face of many afflictions. So at that time, Ananda also really wanted to realize the nature of mind, and through samadhi, to recognize the nature of mind and be free from the cycle of rebirth. On the one hand, the Buddha then asked this question, which was essentially like the direct pointing to the nature of mind in Vajrayana teachings. He was giving him a kind of indication. At that moment, the Tathagata raised his golden arm. Originally, the Tathagata's entire physical form is of the color of gold from Jambudvapa. He raised his golden arm, forming the five-wheel mudra by bending his fingers. According to some interpretations, the 5 fingers are held to represent the 5 great elements. The Buddha then executes a gesture known as the Vajra fist or the radiant light fist. Some says that he forms the fist sequentially. Some hold that this gesture symbolizes the mark of the 1,000-spoked wheel, hence the fingers are clenched into this type of fist, which is called the fist of light, and this will be explained further below. After the Buddha made a fist with his hand, he showed it to Ananda. He said, Ananda, did you see this? Because in Vajrayana practice, just like Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra, some directly point to the sky asking, where is the nature of mind? Did you see that? Sometimes this happens, right? In Chan Buddhism, many great masters also use symbolic gestures to teach or directly point to the truth. Actually, at that time, the Buddha also, he used his hand to carefully make a tight fist and then slowly showed it to Ananda. He asked, did you see my fist? At that moment, Ananda replied, yes, I saw it. Then the Buddha said, so what did you actually see? What exactly did you perceive? Actually, earlier as well, the Buddha asked, did you see my dignified body? He replied, I saw it. It looks very beautiful and dignified. Now, this is actually the second time it appears here in this context. With this second occurrence, it is also a form of direct pointing. Some great masters, like Master Hanshan, they say the 7 methods of searching for the mind we discussed earlier refer to the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. Earlier, the focus was mainly on the aggregates of form and feeling to understand the true nature of the mind, and starting from this point, the aggregate of perception is used, because here the aim is to break through deluded thoughts. Aggregate form was used for direct pointing, as well as the overall aggregate of feeling. Both of these aspects were discussed in detail. Next, the aggregate of perception will be discussed. There are also such interpretations. In fact, in Master Hanshan's commentary, he provided a particularly detailed structural analysis. He said that his greatest contribution to explaining the Shurangama Sutra was his exceptionally well done structural analysis. The other day I said that the flight of Garuda was my own contribution to the Garuda, I suppose. Hanshan said, my analysis is very meticulous, and indeed, in some places it seems almost too detailed. We can't even understand it ourselves. His contribution is that we end up even more confused. However, these great masters, they still spent their whole lives studying the Shurangama Sutra, and in the end, whether it was many states of spiritual cultivation or the result of a long-term study and careful, thoughtful contemplation, if it is put into writing, it should still be very valuable. Ananda said, I saw the Tathagata's arm with my own eyes. If such graceful fingers are gently curled up like this is called the radiant fist. What he saw was the radiant fist. Then it illuminated my heart and my eyes. He said that Tathagata's radiant fist, which was displayed just now, truly illuminated all of us with its brilliance. He might be like ordinary people in the world. Like Ananda, for example. You should be able to see the Buddha clearly. Not only his fist, but also saw the radiant fist. It must have been exceptionally bright, as described by witnesses. It turns out that Bhikshu Shanxing also said, "I've served as your attendant for a long time, and I couldn't see anything else, except that you indeed have a bit of radiance." Some are like this, but some seem, in the Samadhi Sutra of contemplating the Buddha, it is said, at that time there were 500 people from the Shakya clan who, since childhood, could not see the Tathagata. The Tathagata's body looked like black charcoal, extremely, extremely unattractive. Once they gathered together and were in great pain. Some pulled their hair, some scratched their chests, feeling especially heartbroken. They said everyone else sees the Tathagata as very dignified and golden in color. So why is it that we, the people of the Shakya clan, just can't see it? And we are originally from the Shakya clan. He is our own Buddha, but none of us can see him. What kind of karmic obstacles are blocking our vision? And so they remain deeply saddened. Later the Buddha told them, it may be related to your karma. It would be best for you to pray to the Buddhas of the past, pray to the Buddhas of the present, and also pray to Maitreya and the Buddhas of the future. In this way, sincerely repent and make prostrations. Perhaps things will get better. So they followed the Buddha's instructions and did as he said. Later, as their karma gradually became purified, they were able to clearly see the Buddha's dignified and majestic form. There were such cases as well. So during the Buddha's time, for people like Ananda, they could see the Buddha's radiant fist. But for people like Devadatta and Sunakshetra, although they could see a certain feature, they couldn't really perceive anything meaningful. On the contrary, they might even develop all sorts of wrong views. For someone like Ananda, he understood the Buddha the very best and could also clearly see all of the Buddha's wonderful qualities. At that time, he too was able to see the radiant fist. Moreover, it illuminated and brightened our hearts and eyes. Then the Buddha continued to ask, so as you mentioned, you say it illuminated your heart and eyes. If you were able to see it, what was it that illuminated you just now? What did you use to perceive it? At this point, after the Buddha had refuted his first two assertions regarding the use of the mind for perception, Ananda was now exhibiting a degree of greater clarity. So he said that the assembly and I actually saw it with our own eyes. I saw it with my own eyes, honestly. Then the Buddha addressed Ananda, saying, "Today, answer me. When the Tathagata clenches his fingers to form the light radiance mudra, thus illuminating your mind, do you perceive this act with your eyes? So your eyes are able to see it? But didn't you just say that it illuminated both your heart and your eyes? In that case, how could my fist possibly be illuminating your heart as well? How did you perceive or notice that particular part, if that's what you meant?" Some great masters from Han region, in their commentaries, also expressed special gratitude toward Ananda. He kept asking questions, one after another, persistently, and the Tathagata continued to keep answering him patiently. If his questions had not been well asked, or if he hadn't asked them thoroughly, then perhaps this Shurangama assembly might not have been able to continue. When the Buddha spoke to him like this at the time, Ananda replied, "Tathagata, you are now inquiring about the location of the mind. You are searching for the true mind, or rather, you are now seeking where our mind is located. On this question, I have exhausted all the strength of my mind, methodically beginning to deduce, to search, to observe, and to examine every aspect with careful attention. Weren't you asking me, where is your mind? So, through my own utmost effort and maximum ability, I began to carefully observe my mind, constantly speculating, searching, and pursuing it in this way, pausing thoughtfully at times. It should be the observer, the seeker, the one who deduces. It should be that the one who can deduce is what I would call the mind. So, when you ask me about my mind, at the very moment you are asking me, sometimes in Vajrayana teachings as well, there is the term sengare, which means where is the mind? In some Vajrayana practices, such as Lama Yangtik, it is rather common, and it also appears in Yeshe Lama. They often ask, where is the mind? Which one is the mind? At that moment, you then, oh, what exactly is my mind? If you use the mind to carefully observe the mind itself, he thinks that the one who is searching this knower should actually be the mind itself. Then the Buddha began to scold him, duo. In the Tibetan language, this duo isn't very obvious. Some commentaries say that this is an interjection from the Guangdong region used for scolding. I don't know if people from Guangdong actually say this, because at the time of translation, it was originally translated from the Guangdong area. Generally, it tends to carry some Minnan dialect intonation. In Tibetan, that is not obvious. Anyway, the Buddha seemed especially displeased. He firmly admonished Ananda in a calm tone, saying, "This is not your mind. How can you be like this? I've already told you so many times, this is not your mind at all. Fool, do you still not know this? After all this time, you still really don't understand even this?" At this moment, Ananda was startled. Ananda was terrified, extremely frightened, because the Buddha started scolding and reproaching him right there. "I've already told you so many times. I've answered the previous 7 questions for you. You still don't understand, and now you still say that the one you're speculating about is the mind. How could this possibly be the mind?" At this moment, Ananda left his seat and put his palms together. He actually stepped away from his seat and immediately stood up. Actually, Ananda was still very good. He never gave up. If it had been someone with a worse temperament being spoken to like that in public, they would have left right away, but Ananda wasn't like that. He started to feel a bit, embarrassed in front of everyone. Then he just stood there. In another spot, he spoke to the Buddha. "If this isn't my mind, then what should it be called? If this isn't my mind, Buddha, please tell me, what exactly is it? I'm really struggling right now. The previous 7 times I asked and failed to understand each time, so I still don't know now." Then the Buddha began to tell him. The Buddha said to Ananda, "This is the illusory appearance and thought arising from previous sensory experiences, which confuses your true nature. When we say illusory experiences from the past, it means relying on dust. Here refers to external conditions. Previous means in front of you, or external conditions. The dust of the external world. Dust just means the external environment. The illusory appearances brought about by the external world. The illusory discriminating thoughts, so the external world, because it doesn't truly exist. The illusory discriminating thoughts brought about by the external world actually confuse your true mind." Here, when he says mind, it can also be interpreted as the physical heart. In Tibetan, the word used is the one for the physical heart. What this means is all kinds of phenomena brought about by the external world, especially those that are confusing and bewildering, have already confused your mind. So from the very beginning, from beginningless time up to the present day, today, you have treated this thief as if he were your own son. In doing so, you have lost your own inherent Tathagatagarbha, the innate luminous nature of your mind. As a result, you become deeply involved in the cycle of samsara. Actually, these things are truly important in your life. We need to recognize our own mind. In fact, what we really do is get confused by all sorts of external phenomena. The so-called dusts are, in fact, not inherently existent. But on the level of appearances, they seem to exist. Our attachment to dusts, or the illusory appearance of our attachment to objects, whether it's sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, or any objects of perception, we keep clinging to them, always believing they truly exist. This is what has already captivated and deluded us. Because of this, we have been wandering from beginningless time up to now. If we can recognize the true nature of the mind that clings to external phenomena, then all of these things will naturally disappear on their own. So from beginningless time, it's as if these illusory appearances have actually caused us great harm. These deceptive illusions, yet we treat them like our own children. We keep doing this repeatedly, like raising a thief in our own home and treating him as our son. That would surely be a huge mistake. In the same way, if we believe that external phenomena truly exist around us, it's actually just like that thief. But we haven't recognized him. It's always like whatever he says is beautiful, we deem beautiful. Whatever is said to sound pleasant, we deem pleasant. Whatever is asserted as truly existent, we deem truly existent. We simply follow all these deluded thoughts. Consequently, we continue to wander in samsara. Okay, that's all for today.
Bandara